Good morning, everyone. We are the Group 2 reporters, and our topic is all about biodiversity and a healthy society. Biodiversity is the source of essential and ecological services that constitute the source of life and its direct consumptive value in food, agriculture, medicine, and industry. Introduction. Decrease in biodiversity is imminent worldwide. Vertebrates fell to 60% from the 1970s due to human causes. It is projected by 2020 wildlife decline will be 67% of the present number, so a major cause is human population, which has doubled in number since 1960 to 7.4 billion. Humans have industrialized the natural habitat as well as marine life. So Earth might enter the sixth mass extinction event according to the experts. So mass extinction is described as disappearance of species at a rate of 1,000 faster than usual. This is but a pressing statement for people is to know more about the importance of our diverse environment and how human activities can either contribute to its growth or destruction. There is a growing importance of society, environment, and health is interrelated to each other. And if human beings fail to recognize the needs of these components, the other remaining components can be affected and compromised. Thus, it is timely to know about the presenting effect of species of being extinct and that our ecosystem being imbalanced. And that's the end of my report. And I will give the floor to the next reporter. Thank you.
Pleasant morning to each and everyone. I'm the one of the reporter in Group 2 where my assigned topic is about biodiversity and ecosystem. So, what is biodiversity? Excuse me. Biodiversity is the vast variety of life forms in the entire Earth. Biodiversity is a variability among living organisms from all sources. Is the source, and biodiversity also is the source of essential goods and ecological services. Biodiversity is a source of for all. So we all know that without the biodiversity, biodiversity, plants, even humans can can stand alone. So biodiversity has a direct consumptive value, and that is food, agriculture, medicine, and industry. So I have a sample of video about the biodiversity.
Our planet's diverse, thriving ecosystems may seem like permanent fixtures, but they're actually vulnerable to collapse. Jungles can become deserts, and reefs can become lifeless rocks, even without cataclysmic events like volcanoes and asteroids. What makes one ecosystem strong and another weak in the face of change? The answer, to a large extent, is biodiversity. Biodiversity is built out of three intertwined features: ecosystem diversity, species diversity, and genetic diversity. The more intertwining there is between these features, the denser and more resilient the weave becomes. Take the Amazon rainforest, one of the most biodiverse regions on Earth, due to its complex ecosystems, huge mix of species, and the genetic variety within those species. Here are tangled liana vines, which crawl up from the forest floor to the canopy, intertwining with treetops and growing thick wooded stems that support these towering trees. Helped along by the vines, trees provide the seeds, fruits, and leaves to herbivores such as the tapir and the agouti, which disperse their seeds throughout the forest so they can grow. Leftovers are consumed by the millions of insects that decompose and recycle nutrients to create rich soil. The rainforest is a huge system filled with many smaller systems like this, each packed with interconnected species. Every link provides stability to the next, strengthening biodiversity's weave. That weave is further reinforced by the genetic diversity within individual species, which allows them to cope with changes. Species that lack genetic diversity due to isolation or low population numbers are much more vulnerable to fluctuations caused by climate change, disease, or habitat fragmentation. Whenever a species disappears because of its weakened gene pool, a knot is untied, and parts of the net disintegrate. So, what if we were to remove one species from the rainforest? Would the system fall apart? Probably not. The volume of species, their genetic diversity, and the complexity of the ecosystems form such rich biodiversity in this forest that one species gap in the weave won't cause it to unravel. The forest can stay resilient and recover from change. But that's not true in every case. In some environments, taking away just one important component can undermine the entire system. Take coral reefs, for instance. Many organisms in a reef are dependent on the coral. It provides key microhabitats, shelter, and breeding grounds for thousands of species of fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. Corals also form interdependent relationships with fungi and bacteria. The coral itself is a loom that allows the tangled net of biodiversity to be woven. That makes coral a keystone organism, one that many others depend on for their survival. So what happens when destructive fishing practices, pollution, and ocean acidification weaken coral or even kill it altogether? Exactly what you might think. The loss of this keystone species leaves its dependents at a loss too, threatening the entire fabric of the reef. Ecosystem, species, and genetic diversity together form the complex tangled weave of biodiversity that is vital for the survival of organisms on Earth. We humans are woven into this biodiversity too. When just a few strands are lost, our own well-being is threatened. Cut too many links, and we risk unraveling it all. What the future brings is unpredictable, but biodiversity can give us an insurance policy, Earth's own safety net, to safeguard our survival.
So moreover, about the video I've shown to you, biodiversity is very great impact in each one of us, not just only for humans, but also even in microorganisms, even in plants, and even tiny species. Each one of us has a great impact to each other, and as the video talks about, we are all intertwined. We can stand alone without it. We can stand alone without the plants, without the animals. So the next one is ecosystem. So what is ecosystem is? So ecosystem consists of all the organisms and the physical environment with which they interact. These biotic and abiotic components are linked together through nutrient cycles and energy flows. I mentioned about biotic and abiotic. So abiotic, it means is a living organism that shapes the environment. It's a living organism, and the examples of biotic is including aquatic plants, fish, amphibians, and algae, or what do you call it? That's about living organisms. However, on the other hand, abiotic is the factors or non-living chemicals and physical parts of the environment that affect the living organisms and the functioning of ecosystem. So, muna siya, ang example is water, air, soil, sunlight, and even minerals. Dili siya kuan kanang it's non-living, but it gives a great impact to the living organisms as well as humans. So that's the biotic and abiotic. So I have here an examples of a food web wherein wherein the rat wherein the rat needs the air of the leaf produces. No. Also the nuthatch, the frog, butterfly, squirrel, deer, pine marten, jackrabbit, eagle, whiptail, ringtail, wolf, mountain lion, cat. These animals are getting the source of air in the land. So on the other hand, the ringtail, their food is rat, and ringtail, the wolf eats the ringtail. So like bali-bali siya. No, not bali-bali, but it's a food web where each living organism depends on the other living organism. So I have also an example about the humans, a food chain of humans. So here, the sun gives this plant, or I can ako lang ni siyang i-call marag about ni siya sa cut. So the sun is gives the plant vitamins. No, this is alugbati ni siya, or petchay, something like that. And then he eats siya sa bug, and the bug eats the chicken, and human beings, we are eat the chicken. So that's the cycle of living organism, abiotic or abiotic or biotic component. So humans also is is an example of biotic. So moreover, what is the importance of biodiversity and ecosystem? So I have here the chart why biodiversity is important in the ecosystem. So first, promoting soil formation. So we all know that it's really important na soil formation, ang soil is healthy. How can we plant plants if our soil is dili ka produce og better na better production. So second, provision of food resources for humans. And third, good health of all living beings. Protecting natural resources. So, by protecting, all in all, we should protect our natural resources. It is because we can stand alone without the living organisms. The next one is fast recovery from natural disasters. So we can't predict the natural disaster na like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. So maabot man dyan na ang mga natural disasters. But more and more, we can say na we should have also but humans also have the recovery in order to live, in order to survive, as well as the living organism, as well as the animals. Next one is maintaining food chains. So it is very important to maintain the food chains, maintaining the genetic diversity. So that's also very important of biodiversity, because without this, how can we survive? How can humans survive? How can animals survive? The last one is maintaining ecosystem balance. The second to the last is maintaining ecosystem balance. So, maintaining ecosystem balance is very important in our biodiversity, in our ecosystem, because it is because without maintaining the ecosystem balance, for example, like overhunting, mag-overhunt ta og food, wala natin makaon. And that's the very one of also the problem in this world. And the lastly is overall sustainable and growth. So sustainability and growth. So this the more manggod na magka-grow, the more na magka-grow ang population, the more said na we need to survive. It is about biodiversity and ecosystem goes hand in hand, because for the survival. So the main point about this topic, my assigned topic, is we can't survive without the animals, without the air, without the water, without the other living things. So the biodiversity is composed of two factors, that is abiotic and biotic, where biotic and abiotic can stand alone for the survival. So that's the end of my report for the ecosystem and biodiversity. And next, we will go to the next reporter. Good morning again. I'm also the one reporter, and I'm Jess and Shanice again, and I will tackling about the nutritional impact of biodiversity. So according to World Health Organization or WHO, biodiversity is a vital element of a human being's nutrition because of its influence to food production. Biodiversity is a major factor that contributes to sustainable food production of human beings. Biodiversity is giving a vital element of human beings' nutrition, and at the same way, it's a major factor that contributes to sustainable food production for the human beings. So first is the ecosystem with food production as an ecosystem service. Second is the species and the ecosystem. And third one is the genetic diversity within the species. So the ecosystem with the food production as an ecosystem service is nature enables people to produce food. In addition to food, ecosystems provide us with many other services, such as fresh water and clean air. So, in the statement, not one of the levels is nature is not only providing people, not only people but other living organisms like the plants, animals. It also provides us fresh water, clean air, also healthy soil, also sunlight. So that's these are known as called ecosystem services. The next one is the species in the ecosystem. An ecosystem is a geographic area where plants, animals, and other organisms, as well as weather and the landscape, work together to form a bubble of life. So all organisms ganihan i-discuss ko about biotic and abiotic. So from a factor of biotic and abiotic, it go hand in hand. It means that ang usa can stand sa usa ka organisms. We can stand without that organism. Humans can stand without food, without the animals. Plants can stand without the heat of the sun or the water. Animals can stand without the other animals. So unsaon na lang og ang animals walay makaon, di ba? Di man sila stand. Unsaon na lang ang humans og walay makaon, we can stand alone. So that's the main point. Ecosystem contain biotic or living parts as well as abiotic factors or non-living parts. And in the same way, biotic factors includes plants, animals, and other organisms. So that's the main point. We can't stand alone. How can we survive if the plants, the animals doesn't exist? The water, the minerals, the heat of the sun, the air, we depends on it also. So we can stand alone. The point is a survival stage. It's a means of to survive. So the last level of the nutrition and biodiversity as the genetic diversity within the species. So genetic diversity is the total number of genetic characteristics in the genetic makeup of a species. It ranges widely from number of species to difference within species and can be attributed to span of survival for a species. So, mo na kong giingon ganina na span of survival for a species. Even animals, even plants, they can't survive without the heat of the sun, the air, the water. How can they survive if there is no air, there is no heat of the sun, there is no air they breathe? So at the same time, they can't survive. At the same time, the plants can survive without the heat of the sun, without the air, and without the water, as well as the human beings can't survive without the food. So go hand in hand. Different species in this ecosystem can survive without other species. Healthy local diets. So healthy local diets with adequate average levels of nutrients intake necessities maintain of high biodiversity levels. Intensified and enhanced food production through irrigation, use of fertilizer, plant protection, pesticides, or the introduction of crops varieties and cropping patterns affect biodiversity and thus impact global nutritional status and human health. So, as the modern world, as we enhance about the technology, we also know nowadays how to maintain the growth of our health. Local diets are also the number one of the plants. So here, the food production through irrigation, use of fertilizer. We use fertilizer to protect our plants, to protect from the pesticides. We also use crop varieties and cropping patterns affect biodiversity to impact global nutritional status and human health. Then lastly, habitat simplification. Species loss and species succession often enhance communities' vulnerabilities as a function of environmental receptivity to ill health. So this means that we have to enhance our communities, the functions about our health, the health of our biodiversity, the health of our ecosystems. So, by the help of the World Organization, the World Health Organization, by the help of it, we gain to maintain the production about the food. Yes, so thanks for the World Health Organization that trying the best to maintain, to nagbantay for our biodiversity or ecosystem. So that's my report for nutritional impact of biodiversity. And I will give the floor to the next reporter about the health, biology, health, biology, and biodiversity.
So, hello everyone. I am Crisel Yen and I'm going to discuss to you my topic, which is the threats to biodiversity. So, what are the threats of biodiversity or the core threats to biodiversity? There are major threats to biodiversity that were identified by the United Nations Environment Program or WHO. These are the following. Number one is habitat loss and destruction. Two is alterations in ecosystem composition. Three is the overexploitation. Four is the pollution and contamination. And five is the global climate change. Let's go to the habitat loss and destruction. So what is habitat loss and destruction? Habitat destruction, defined as the elimination or alteration of the conditions necessary for animals and plants to survive, not only impacts individual species, but the health of the global ecosystem. Its major contributing factor is the inhabitation of human beings and the use of land for economic gains. The next one would be the alterations in ecosystem composition. Alterations and sudden changes within the species groups or the environment could begin to change the entire ecosystem. Alterations in ecosystems are a critical factor for contributing to species and habitat loss. Now let's go to the overexploitation. What is overexploitation? Overhunting, overfishing, or overcollecting of species can quickly lead to its decline. Changing consumption patterns of human is often cited as the key reason for this unsustainable exploitation of natural resources. The fourth one would be the pollution and contamination. Biological systems respond slowly to changes in their surrounding environment. Pollution contamination cause irreversible damage to species and varieties. The fifth one would be the global climate change. Global climate change, both climate variability and climate change caused by diversity loss. Species and population may be lost permanently if they are not provided with enough time to adapt changing climatic conditions. Consequences of biodiversity loss. Even with the improvement of technology and science at present, we still have a lot to learn about biodiversity. More so about the consequences of biodiversity loss. However, the basic concept about biodiversity loss was from Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace. So the intact ecosystem function best signs the organism composing them are specialized to function in that ecosystem to capture, transfer, utilize, and ultimately lose both energy and nutrients. The particular species making up an ecosystem determine its productivity. Affect nutrient cycle, making up an ecosystem determine its productivity and affect the nutrient cycle and soil containance, and influence environmental conditions such as water cycle, weather patterns, climate change, and non-biotic aspects. The loss of biodiversity has many consequences that we understand and many that we don't. It is apparent that humankind is willing to sustain a great deal of biodiversity loss if there are contaminant benefits to society. So we hope that they are not net benefits. In many cases, the benefit seems to occur to a few individuals only. With net social losses, however, it is extremely difficult to estimate the future cost of losses in biodiversity or environmental damage. As stated by Thelma, the Earth will retain its most striking feature, its biodiversity, only if humans have the presence to do so. This will occur, it seems, only if we realize that the extent to which we use biodiversity. So those are the threats or the core threats to biodiversity loss. Now let's go to the consequences of biodiversity loss. That could be the end of my report. Thank you so much for listening.
Good morning everyone. My name is Justin Takan. So my assigned topic is all about changes in biodiversity. So why there is a changes in biodiversity? So the reason that our biodiversity changes is the human activities such as habitat destruction, fragmentation, wastewater disposal, oxygen depletion, and accumulation of human waste and compound. So, a change in biodiversity could have erratic effects not only in wildlife but also in human life. So, for example, humans inhabiting the forest would disturb the natural order of life. Trees and plants would be affected in the land clearing operations where the houses would be built. The animals, insects, and all types of life forms in the cleared area would either be displaced or most likely be killed. The loss of these life forms could affect the entire ecosystem governing that environment. The food chain might be damaged. From this, we can clearly infer that when our ecosystem is not well taken care of, biodiversity encounters changes that may impact human health on such different levels. So next is the health, biology, and biodiversity. So all living organisms are dependent to their environment to live and reproduce. The basic needs of living organisms such as air, water, food, and habitat are provided by its environment. The evolution of human beings was due to the improved access to their basic needs. Advances in agriculture, sanitation, water treatment, and hygiene have had far greater impact on human health than medical technology. Lack of basic necessities is a significant cause of human mortality. Some human illnesses that are found to be related to its environment includes heart disease, cancer, asthma, diabetes, and many other illnesses. So, what is the interrelationship between health, biology, and biodiversity? So, people depend on biodiversity in their daily lives. Human health ultimately depends upon ecosystem, products and services such as availability of fresh water, food and fuel services, which are requisite for good human health and productive livelihoods.